Good morning. You're listening to Drinking Socially, the official Untappd podcast.
Your weekly look at what's happening in the Untappd community and the world of beer.
This episode is brought to you by Untappd and the Untappd merch store. Use coupon code PODCASTS to get 20% off your next purchase at store.untappd.com.
And I'm Harrison. Punkins! So at minimum, pumpkins have become their own food group beyond just the gourd itself. They've kind of found their way into everything. And the other extreme is that they've kind of become a way of life. You know, and as much as I try to deny it, I am knee deep in that pumpkin patch lifestyle right now. I'm loving it, John. This year, the early pumpkin favorites for me have been some pumpkin Cinnabuns that I've been snagging from Trader Joe's. I think we're through whatever carton number 3 or 4 already, part of any balanced breakfast. And then a close second, though, is pumpkin pasta, followed by pumpkin toothpaste. Just kidding. There is no such thing as pumpkin pasta.
Yeah.
But, all right. All those pumpkin things, though, really just training me, my palate, my brain to kind of enjoy the pumpkin king of edible pumpkin things, pumpkin beer. And we have one of the most well-known ones in the country with us today. It's one that I've loved since the first time I ever had it. It's got a great history behind it. So with that, John, what are we pouring into our gourds this evening?
We've got a banger on the show, as my nephew would phrase it.
Sounds right.
Yeah, it's Dogfish Head's Punkin Ale. So the second most checked in pumpkin beer on Untappd. And we ran a poll earlier in the season to kind of ask people which pumpkin beer would you like us to do this year in October. And Pumpkin is the winner. Most checked in pumpkin beer, perhaps the barometer for pumpkin beer worldwide. But Dogfish Head Punkin Ale came in second place in so many different varieties, including the poll that we ran. That's what we're drinking today. It's a 7% pumpkin or yam beer, as it's listed on Untappd. They do publish 28 IBUs, which is entirely palatable. You won't find much bitterness in there. And from Dogfish Head, they give us a little kind of preview, a full-bodied brown ale, which is really nice to see in a pumpkin beer, in my opinion, with smooth hints of pumpkin, brown sugar, and so they brew pumpkin ale with real pumpkin meat, brown sugar, and spices. One, kind of weird, but I'm aware that pumpkin meat is an actual term. Moving on. As the season cools, this becomes the perfect beer to warm up with, says Dogfish Head. Harrison, I see you're already cracked it open and working on a glass. What do you think first sips?
First sips is, that's the immediate impression. All the training, all those Cinnabuns are paying off. My palate is acutely ready to absorb this. But really, I love this beer, and the fact that it's a brown ale is like the game-changing bit of it that maybe gets a little too overlooked about it. That like a common complaint of pumpkin beers is they're too sweet, but the body that this provides, the roastedness of the malts, comes to the brown ale, it kind of stands up against that sweetness. So first sips are right. The nose is amazing. It's all allspice and cloves and stuff. I love the nose. I could just sit and kind of live there. And then it's this really good brown ale with like a little bit of that kind of pumpkin spice bite that pops at the end. And it's great. It's exactly what I want. Yeah, but it's like a darker pumpkin beer. It's very drinkable. It's great. What about you, John? What are you experiencing over there?
You're dead on with the nose, with the aroma of this beer. It smells like you're shopping at a holiday bookstore.
Yep, there you go.
It smells like the fall. It smells like September to me. And when it comes to taste, I said this last year when we reviewed pumpkin beers. I don't think I know what pumpkin tastes like, but I'm very familiar with like cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, and I get it almost layered. Yeah. You know, you got this kind of not heavy, but it's a brown ale, but it's got some heft to it. And then as it kind of flows across my tongue and into happiness, it just in that order. Like I get cinnamon,
Yeah.
then I get a little bit kind of that elevated, I don't know, fruitiness of nutmeg.
Yeah.
And then allspice, which to me just tastes like pumpkin pie. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how this beer finishes. And that's just one sip in, right?
No, right. It's amazing. And I tell you what, it's been I think I missed this beer last season, but so it's been a minute since I've had it. But the nose took me right back to like the first time I had it, when their labels were still like papery labels, and it was just the Dogfish and like the name of the beer and maybe a color. Now it's this awesome kind of collage of wild holiday things. But yeah, I've probably enjoyed this beer since, like, I don't know, the early 2000s. It's been a while, since I kind of became aware of it. But it's, yeah, that nose has been the same. It like took me right back. It's very, and a lot of these pumpkin beers use the same spices, but this, for whatever reason, maybe it's also the brown ale behind it. It's so identifiable, as I know I could be, on a desert island for 10 years and come back to civilization, and the first thing I smell in the dark is this, and I'll be like, that's Dogfish Head's Punkin Ale. No question.
This beer's got some legs. When it was first being brewed, the Buffalo Bills were losing their last Super Bowl. So that's how old this is. But perhaps again this year.
They're looking good.
I've got I don't know. I think this beer has an awesome origin story. I'll share in a little bit. But
yeah,
keeping true with this new tradition, I wanted to talk about the BJCP's guide to pumpkin beers, which in this case actually refers to this as an autumn seasonal beer, which can include a pumpkin beer. And so it's listed as 30B in the style guideline if you're playing at home. It's an amber to copper spiced beer, and you can often find it with a moderately rich body and a slightly warming finish, basically designed to pair with a fall season or even evoke some kind of Thanksgiving flavors. And so that's the overall designed impression of this beer, which right away tells you this doesn't have the strict guidelines that like an American IPA or an English brown is going to carry.
Right.
There's many different interpretations that a BJCP judge can look for in this beer and still judge it as if it's an autumn seasonal beer, a pumpkin beer included. A couple commercial examples include this Dogfish Head Punkin Ale, Southern Tier's Pumpkin, Southampton's Punkin Ale.
That's a great
listed.
one.
I figured that'd perk Harrison up a little bit. So there's a lot of different, you can find toasty caramel, biscuit malt, nuts, molasses, honey, brown sugar. You can find these on a dessert table at a good Thanksgiving. And all of those are acceptable in this beer.
Absolutely.
The one requirement, that's how you say it, is spice. So it must include spice. You can do just allspice or a mixture of cinnamon, cloves, ginger. Any combination is possible. And what I like about the guidelines for this beer is that creativity is actually encouraged. They encourage you to use adjuncts like molasses, brown sugar, honey, maple syrup, and a gourd like a squash or a pumpkin, most frequently used. There's one thing I found that was kind of cool is that if you enter this beer to be judged, you must specify a base style. So in this case, we're drinking a brown ale, and it doesn't have to necessarily conform to a classic base style, but then you also have to specify your ingredients, spices, herbs, vegetables, and how they were used. Example, pumpkin pie spice or whole pumpkin pies.
Yeah.
And that'll be used to kind of judge the beer that you submit. So in a TLDR would be that pumpkin beers are one of the many variants you could find in the autumn seasonal beer category. But it's one of the categories that really encourages, like, throw the whole sink in there, throw the whole Thanksgiving dessert table in there, make it taste good.
Right. Yeah. And 2 points to build on that, John. One was last season we did Yeah, it's a big category. So I think we did like a blonde ale that was a pumpkin beer and also a porter that was a pumpkin beer.
Yep.
So you can talk about opposite ends of the spectrum. So, and this is a brown ale kind of landing in the middle a little bit there. So yeah, lots to play with, lots of fun stuff to do. But the big recommendation is I feel like I relearn this every year, is get it early. Everyone complains about them showing up in August and then they're gone by the middle of September, and you really want them on Thanksgiving. So if you see a six-pack next time you're in the grocery store, wherever you shop, pop it in your cart, because you're going to want it, in a month or so, if not before then.
Yeah, it's already halfway through October.
Right,
If you
exactly.
find a pumpkin beer, get it.
Get it now, because I know I am going to want this thing kind of, as I, watch my football team into just kind of failing horribly on Thanksgiving Day, rejoice with some pumpkin magic and a turkey sandwich and a turkey sandwich. And I'll be right in that moment with the world. But yeah, love this style. This is a blast. What's next? What are we doing now? Something kind of crazy, it looks like.
I mean, we're halfway to Halloween, right?
We are, absolutely.
So I know we were talking about, well, I know you were talking about eating. Your kids don't listen to the show, do they? Talking about maybe borrowing some Halloween candy from them.
That's right.
Exercising your parental duties and making sure that the candy is in fact an Almond Joy when it's labeled as an Almond Joy. So what about, we've seen in the past, people do like Girl Scout and beer pairings. Let's talk about for a little bit your Halloween candy or candy bar, if we keep it a little more specific,
Sure.
pairings. What would what beer would you drink with those fun size minis?
Right, or the king size, if you know which houses to go to, which just comes from experience. So the first one I have lined up is one that candy bar near and dear to my heart. It was probably my favorite candy bar as a kid, the Milky Way. So pretty classic. For this beer, or for this candy bar rather, I think it would stack up nicely and work nicely with like a Baltic porter. So maybe like a beer that already favors kind of those chocolatey notes, but it's maybe a little bit higher in alcohol and can be higher in IBUs too, to help kind of cut through all the caramel and chocolate magic that's happening inside a Milky Way. I see that kind of working well together. And a pro tip, if you don't do it already with your Milky Ways, drop those guys in the freezer for a little before you eat them. What I used to do is just bite like the top of the candy bar off, exposing the caramel, and then kind of like a vampire remove the caramel and then eat to kind of deconstruct it all like a psychopath as a child. So that was it was fun. Then the freezer made that happen. A melty candy bar would just fall apart, but a little bit of technology and the magic of ice, you too can kind of decapitate a Milky Way while you enjoy a Baltic Porter. So anyway, that's what I started with. I couldn't not, being the kind of candy bar of my youth, the good old reliable Milky Way. But John, what kind of came to mind first for you when we were walking down this sugary road?
Yeah, first thing I'm grabbing out of anyone's Halloween bag is a Kit Kat. But before, just a real quick question: is a Milky Way just a Snickers without the nuts?
That's right. That's one for the ages. I think we're getting down to ratios and proportions here, because the nuts obviously have to displace space that could have been maybe filled with more chocolate or more caramel, and that's what to me makes a Milky Way, is the ratios of caramel to chocolate to kind of chewy goodness. But in essence, I think you might be right, John. And it's interesting. I'm one of those guys where, give me a bag of nuts, I'll eat them all day. Give me a candy bar, I'll also eat them all day. But give me a candy bar with nuts. Until recently, that was kind of a no-no for me. As a child, it was like, nuts are healthy, get them out of my candy bars. Here, enjoy, little brother, enjoy these Snickers, give me your Milky Ways. And, I'm sure he has, whatever nuts give you. Cholesterol levels?
Resistance? Yeah, probably higher. Okay.
But yeah, you're probably right, John. You're probably right.
Well, I appreciate your aficionado. There's a better word than that, but your really detailed look.
Something.
And so for me, I chose for my first one a Kit Kat. It's probably the candy bar I've consumed most of throughout my life.
Yeah.
And what pairs well with it? Everything. Marriage, a bad day at work. But
oh man,
for a Kit Kat, right? So all candy bars generally have chocolate is a main component.
Sure.
So I think I'm inclined to think dark beers and stuff, and that makes perfect sense. But for a Kit Kat, I'm thinking like a slightly bitter, maybe a Czech Pilsner, or
right.
maybe I could go as much flavor as an Oktoberfest, but I'm really thinking really clean and crisp beer because I want to enjoy every bit of that Kit Kat.
Yeah.
And then I want to like jump and have a sip of like a really like very pure German 300-year-old beer that I drink and then go right back to my Kit Kat. I don't want anything to interfere with the flavor of those flaky layers of deliciousness.
Maybe like an alt beer or something that could darker, could dance around a bit, but it's not going to take away from the lightness of the waferness. That's
The beauty is
exciting.
That every beer is a good pairing, but I don't know. Not a seltzer, but I want something. I want something that doesn't bring much to the table other than bubbly refreshingness.
Love that.
So I'm failing to answer that specifically, but if you ask me what beer style, it would probably be a light lager.
Yeah.
Something readily available that's not going to interfere with my Kit Kat. Sorry, Harrison. What other candy bars you got on your mind?
Yeah. So next up for me, I kind of just went back to the Halloween bag of my youth, and as a end of the night, lay it all out. What are you eating first? First Milky Way. Then for me, it was always the Three Musketeer, and if I recall correctly, that got a lot of heat from my peers as a child. Kind of like the Three Musketeer bar, that's just nougat. That's nothing. Nothing. That's like saying that's just Friday or that's just Christmas Eve. Nougat is amazing. Nougat is what, as a person who's now more conscious of how much his weight line changes every time I enjoy a milkshake, nougat's what you want because it's airy. So like it like fills up a large space. So like you're eating a lot of chocolatey stuff, but in reality, a lot of it's air. So you're kind of helping yourself out there when enjoying some nougat, at least helping your waistline out. As a kid, I didn't care about that. It kind of just tasted like a pillow of chocolate. And that was exciting for obvious reasons. So that being said, kind of knowing the nature of nougat and how it's a little bit, it's puffy, but surrounded by milk chocolate in this case, you're dealing with a lot of chocolate kind of flavors there. I thought a black IPA would work well with a Three Musketeer bar. And that, like the hops itself, so the roastiness that can come through from black IPA would maybe pull out or help accentuate some of those darker chocolatey flavors of the Musketeer bar. But the hops could kind of help cut through the milk chocolate and like the nougat as you kind of keep just throwing Three Musketeers in your mouth. Need some relief for your palate, and then on the flip side, right as I think start getting palate fatigue from all the nougat. The hops in the black IPA can help kind of wash that all away. So it's a black IPA and Three Musketeers is a recipe for 100 Three Musketeer bars and 20 black IPAs. That may be dangerous. It may have created like the fall of mankind in one simple silly pairing. So tread carefully. But for me, that one seemed like a nice complimentary, I guess, experience that I really want to try now. I need to get my hands on a Three Musketeer bar. Let's see if there are any left. But that was where my mind went there, John.
And I kind of want a black IPA now. Lord Hobo just got to North Carolina. You think we could score some of their Doom sauce pretty quick?
I think I know a guy. I think we can make that happen. Perfect. All right, what's next?
I also want a Three Musketeers. Okay, so this is dangerous. Let's mix it up. a candy bar, if you'll grant me a little bit of wiggle room. Sour Patch Kids.
Oh my goodness.
They show up in your Halloween bag, at least. You know they do. No one really chases them, but there comes a point in your life where you love Sour Patch Kids.
Sure.
And if you look in our Facebook group or you follow Craft Beer on Instagram, you've probably seen a couple varieties of Sour Patch Kid fruited Berliners. Greg Avola,
Yes.
Untappd founder, just was posting some
Right.
beautiful photos with one a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
And so Sour Patch Kids are kind of like the candy version of a fruited Berliner. They're
Sure.
a little fruity, a little sour. They're amazing.
Love it.
They don't have chocolate, so you're still going to need a candy bar afterwards, like to finish dessert. But for me, I think for Sour Patch Kids, those are my seltzer beer. Or you know what? Is Zima a beer? Can we say that?
And I think I see where you're going here, because that was a big thing, right? In the past, with Zima, was a little bit of
Yep.
Sour Patch Kid action in there.
Before I was old enough to drink, I remember Zima and Gummy Bears and Zima and Sour Patch and Zima and Jolly Ranchers.
Right.
I don't know. I want to try stuffing a whole bunch of Sour Patch Kids in my mouth and then drinking a seltzer and seeing what happens. I'm up for it. If anybody's doing it at home, send in a photo, send in a video. Let us know,
please.
John, you shouldn't do that. Or
Right.
hats
Clock your
off to
blood
you,
sugar
go
while
for
you
it.
do it. Yeah, exactly. Let's a new high score. What does that mean? Did I break it?
Let's do one more, Harry. What's your favorite Halloween grab, or I don't know, first one you think of here?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Milky Way, Three Musketeers kind of battled out as a kid for my favorite candy bars, always shunning the kind of peanut lace Snickers. And how ironic, now as an adult, I prefer the crushed peanutty creamy goodness that is inside every Reese's peanut butter cups. That's what I'm kind of going to finish up with today. Reese's Cups, Reese's peanut butter cups, they're amazing. And for this, I didn't want to overthink it. I know I'm leaning heavily towards the darker beers, all these chocolate candy bars, but pumpkin porter. So much like, or I mean, the beer we're having tonight would be great too, but kind of a darker pumpkin beer to just kind of ride that layer flavor train of chocolate and peanut butter from the candy, and then chocolate and pumpkin from the beer, and just let that all happen. And again, not try to worry about what's overpowering and is it too much chocolate. And I'm just going to throw it all out the window, throw 2 Reese's Cups in my face at once, take a huge swig of some pumpkin porter or another swig of Dogfish Head's Punkin Ale, and just kind of enjoy what happens next. I think that's a recipe for something great. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to kind of stumble upon that treasure chest, but it's one that I could see being, once again, too excited. Much like Three Musketeers and the Black IPA, there's just no end in sight. You're in a corner drinking beers, eating candy, and have a lot of questions to answer from people that care about you. But that's fine. That's for tomorrow morning. You do you tonight. It's a holiday. Just live your life.
It's October 14th, but
Almost, right. Almost a holiday. Right. Right. Every day is a holiday now, isn't it? It's probably like National Do Whatever You Want Day, or something. But that was one that got me excited. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys too if you're doing any of this stuff. But John has one more, I think, to finish this off, which is going to get me, I'm sure, just hungry as I already am for candy and more beer. But John, what was your kind of final thought as you ran through this to cap it all off, candy and beer?
It's the grown-up candy bar, right? It's sophisticated. It's a Manhattan candy bar, but it's not Fifth Avenue.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
It's the Almond Joy.
Ah, yes.
Right, coconuts are practically a vegetable. It's almost health food.
Correct.
It's got almonds in it, which are actually healthy, and coconut, which is sometimes in shampoo.
Right.
So it's basically health food, but it's become such an amazing. Just saying Almond Joy.
Yeah. You smile.
And it's chocolate and coconut and a little bit of almond. I guess maybe I would be all right with a Mounds bar as well.
Sure.
But I don't know. Almond Joy is where I go, and that for me it's also a beautiful stout. I want a minimum 10% threshold on whatever stout I'm drinking with this Almond Joy. I love chocolate and coconut. Boulevard did for a while. They were doing their smokestack series.
Yes.
And they did a chocolate coconut stout, and I wish I still had more of it. There's a brewery out in Houston, Texas, Buffalo Bayou. They cleverly circumvent any sort of maybe C&D. You can't do that type of laws by making a beer called Joyful Almond. And I love them for doing that. And it is exactly what you think it would be. So Almond Joy and a glass of room temperature, 15% stout.
Yeah.
Hopefully with some coconut in there.
Oh, wow.
That's Halloween for me.
That's it. That's good night. I'll take a nap during this commercial, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. That sounds fantastic. Oh yeah, John, I'm digging it, man. What a cool. Right now, I'm just hungry and excited, and
sorry.
It's good. Those are what I normally feel most nights, but now I have kind of a couple experiments to look forward to. Soon I'm sure an influx of candy and beer will be entering this house, and now I have kind of some work-related things I need to do and take pictures of, which is all I need to just run free with this stuff. So I'm pumped for that. But as I said before, if you guys are out there, you can tag us, tweet at us, jump in the group, share your photos. If you have some really cool kind of candy bar beer combos, we want to see it. Don't keep that to yourself. If you found something better than, Almond Joys and 15% stouts, show us, share it with us all. And maybe we can try to one up you guys with some bourbon barrel aged whatever in a Werther's original. I don't know. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting crazy.
Werther's are good. So I do want to take a second and just kind of recognize Dogfish Head's Punkin Ale for it's got over 325,000 check-ins on Untappd.
Wow.
And then there's vintages. You can check in this year's 2020s, and you can tell by the cool label. So this beer does well on Untappd, but my favorite, one of the stories I heard early on when I was a beer buyer, was how this beer and by proxy Dogfish Head came about. I made reference to the fact they were brewing this when the Bills were in the Super Bowl last time.
Right.
And that was, you're old enough to drink if you were born after that. So Delaware does this cool contest every year called the Punkin Chunkin, which is a militaristic approach to building pumpkin catapults. There's hydraulic powered ones. There's trebuchets. There's they have rules on what pumpkins you can use. It's amazing. If you haven't, Google it. Right? Have you ever been to it, Harrison?
I've never been, but I watched the kind of, I think it was Discovery Channel did a crazy kind of series or episode on it, and I have seen that though. I've been to a corn maze in New England with their own trebuchet pumpkins, and I have fired one myself into a field, and on the other side of the field was a busy road. So luckily someone got out there and figured out how far they could actually go. Didn't get to the road, so everything was fine. But definitely in the back of my mind was, is that your insurance, my insurance? What happens? I'm
just walking away. So presumably in the safety of insurance and some kind of leading lines.
Yep.
The Punkin Chunkins happen I don't know the origin stories of it in Delaware, but it's amazing. YouTube it and see the work that goes into these pumpkin flinging devices. And Dogfish Head, before they were even open, before they were even a brewery you would know about, they submitted this Punkin Ale to the Punkin Chunkin kind of contest. Obviously, there's more than just throwing pumpkins, it's 400 yards down the road. Right. And they won first prize. It was a great kind of inauguration for them, and they've brewed it every year since then. Generally, you'll find it early in September. If you do find it, my advice would be to grab some of it, as long as you're not averse to pumpkins, because it's gone, by the time the weather really gets cold. But I love that story. I think Dogfish Head's an amazing brewery with a really cool story, and a really cool rap video. If you know Sam Calagione
Yes.
is the founder of Dogfish Head, and you Google him enough, or look on YouTube, you'll see him drinking beer and rapping with Mac Miller, who's amazing, and spitting some bars himself.
Right. He was in his own band, the Pain Relievers, with the Brian, the head brewer at Dogfish Head. So Sam's a talented guy, super cool dude. I'm sure you all assume if you never met him. I've had a chance to a couple times. He's been great every time we've crossed paths. And obviously, really,
We'll have him on. He'll be.
That's right.
I'm pretty sure he'll be with us on the 10th anniversary special coming up in 10 days or so.
Right. That's right. Oh my gosh, time. What does it mean? That's pretty wild. But you're right. Yeah. So you had a chance to kind of hear from the man himself in just 2 weeks' time. But before we finish up, thought I definitely wanted to grab one really exciting thing that I saw from the Facebook group for our updates this week. Last year, John and I posted a recipe for a pumpkin beer that you could brew and then ferment in a pumpkin, in an actual pumpkin. That's right. We called it Out of Our Gourds. That was the recipe name. Yes. And somebody did it, and not just anybody. So Eric Gleed, he actually posted a photo of his beer fermenting away in the Drinking Socially Facebook group, which was, I woke up to that, I think, one day and was like, this is amazing. It's been a year in the making to get some feedback from this. So really cool that Eric came across it, brewed it up, did it himself. So Eric, please, by now, I'm sure it's probably almost ready to be consumed. So love to get some updates. Hit us up, post it in the group if you haven't since adding your first post there. So love to see kind of how it's moving along. And if you guys are interested as well in trying that yourself, great. We'll put the recipe again in the show notes for this show for Out of Our Gourds. And you don't need a pumpkin if you're just like an amateur home brewer or a really experienced one. You can make this beer and just add sugar pumpkin to it, just like Dogfish Head does, and actually the pumpkin meat to the beer and ferment it in, whatever bucket or carboy or other vessel you like to use. But if you're feeling a little wild this year, pumpkin in a pumpkin itself. Quick pro tip, something cool to try is actually if you have like a torch or an open flame that you trust to kind of roast the inside of that pumpkin first before you knock the beer out into it. It can add kind of a roasted pumpkin flavor to it as opposed to more of like a raw, uncooked pumpkin. So
never trust an open flame.
Right. Yeah. Good, John. I'm glad someone said it. But yeah, there's always ways to iterate. That's one of them. But Eric, yeah, so cool you did that. I'm really excited to see the results and see if anyone else kind of takes it upon themselves too to just knock out into a pumpkin. It's pretty wild.
We've got, check out, if you're listening to this show, scroll down, look through the notes. There's going to be a link in there to Harrison's recipe for Out of Our Gourds. And we, obviously love to see what you guys do with that. Especially those of you that are in the Facebook group that are home brewers. Closing out this episode, Harrison, one thing I didn't get to really ask your opinion on, but I think it's getting there, right? It's 2020. Pumpkin beers aren't quite as brand new as they used to be, but I see a lot of memes and discussions about cinnamon and sugar rim jobs. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening. On your beer glass when you're drinking a pumpkin beer, in a sentence or two, what's your feeling on cinnamon and sugar rims? I love them.
Right.
Hell yes. I think they're good. But what do you think?
I think, right. It's like all things. You do you, live your life. You only get one of them as far as we know. So yeah, sugar rim it up with some cinnamon and some molasses or whatever you got. Now's the time of year to do it. It's bulking season, as they say. So a little bit extra sugar, it goes a long way. But yeah, it's not something I'm doing in my home because I would just make a mess and probably just stand next to, in the kitchen
eating all
sugar.
Let's dip toast in here.
Exactly. Right. Right. Oh, the butter fell in. Oh, now I can drink it. How unfortunate for me. That would just be a recipe for death. I don't have that kind of self-control. But if you're out there in the world on a deck somewhere enjoying a pumpkin beer and some cinnamon sugar ends up on that rim, great. Just life has handed you lemonade. No lemons for you today. Enjoy it. And don't think about it too much. Just kind of live in that moment.
I can appreciate that all day long. If you sprinkled cinnamon and sugar on my pumpkin pie, I would not object.
Oh, sure.
I would ask if you had like Cool Whip or a house-made whipped cream,
right. Vanilla ice cream,
and also
right.
and a couple of beers, maybe Punkin Ale. GABFA, Great American Beer Festival, this weekend. If you're listening when the show comes out, October 14th, this coming weekend is the Great American Beer Festival. And what's unique, cool, different about it this year is that you can attend virtually. So you don't have to take 2 weeks off and fly out to Denver and pay $400 for a Motel 6. You can enjoy Great American Beer Festival from your home. And I know what you're thinking, John. There's not 10,000 breweries in my home. Me either. But it's pretty cool. It's accessible. I think you can buy a passport or a ticket and watch the event virtually this year. Harrison, are you planning on attending anything or kind of drinking a beer and watching along yourself? I'm gonna be in on Saturday.
Good. Yeah, I'd hope to. It's a lot of fun, especially being a part of it in the past. When working at breweries, this will be really cool this year. And a lot of breweries, if you haven't checked out already, maybe your local ones doing it, are kind of creating like packages of the beers they've submitted for kind of the judgment side of GABFA for you to purchase from them. So to kind of drink along with them, kind of pick your favorite brewery, see what they have available in their online store. And if you can, get your hands on it, there is a way to kind of have a bit of something to enjoy that's either being featured or judged or what have you at that the actual festival itself this year, which is really, really cool that they're doing that. And just making the best out of a situation we're all in. So I'm gonna maybe get my hands on some of that if but certainly keep track. I always do look at kind of the results and the winners and all that stuff each year. It's fun to see kind of who is the next brewery we all need to look out for and try to get our hands on.
And what about, last thing for you, Harrison, what about the top hop spot? Usually I get a good tip about the next six pack I'm going to pick up.
Sure. Things to look out for. So we're going to skip that this week. We spent way too much time in candy bar land, and that's okay. But next week we'll bring it back and kind of keep moving through all the 7 C's hops and tackle the next one. And along with that, next week, it's our last episode before Untappd's 10th anniversary virtual festival. So we're hoping to get our hands on a version of I Remember My First Check-In on that show, or drink it ahead of time, share some thoughts about it, maybe share some cool stories and history of our own with Untappd, stuff like that to kind of warm us up for what's sure to be a really fun weekend. We have been kind of working along, the whole Untappd team has, at making that a blast. So hope to, hear with talk with you next week, and then for sure the actual festival itself. Enjoy the heck out of that day with you guys too. And as a reminder, this show is brought to you by Untappd and the Untappd store. Use the code podcast and save 20% on your next sweet hat or taster glass or whatever cool thing you grab your hands on. That's store.untappd.com, and the code is podcast. Punch it in and grab something sweet.
Other than that, enjoy your pumpkin beers. The show notes for this show and all of our shows are available at podcast.untappd.com, or you can scroll down on whatever podcast player you're using. Find that link for Harrison's Out of Our Gourds pumpkin beer. Brew it up. Send a picture to us on Twitter at That Beer Podcast. And maybe Harrison will come help you bottle it up. Sorry I volunteered you there, but
Wear my own knee pads. It's fine.
If you listen to the packaging episode last week, you know that's not his favorite thing to do. But definitely, we encourage you, interact, send us questions, let us know what you like, you don't like. Connect directly with Untappd on any of your favorite social medias and tell them that you absolutely love Harrison's heavy metal t-shirts.
Yeah, and other than that, we'll see you guys next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.
There it is.